It feels like only a couple of months ago, I was going nuts about PrusaSlicer 2.6 and how it really did change the way that we look at slicing. And then 2.6.1. 2.7 is here. I think it's time Prusa actually makes a CAD package. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And hey, if you're new here, you want to learn more about slicers, leave a like, get subscribed, and let me know what exactly you want to learn more about in those slicers down in those comments below. PrusaSlicer 2.7 is finally here, and with it comes quite a few changes. Now, I am filming this before the actual release, but we are already in the second release candidate, so theoretically, it's happening pretty much the next few days. So let's go through some of these big changes. And one of the big ones is not only the SVG embossing tool, but now G2 and G3 commands. Yes, those of you that were looking for Arc Welder, you got it. But one of the big ones for me is this SVG embossing tool. It is often that we will get designs from people that are SVGs. Our logos have SVGs. All the drawings that we have, of course, merch coming soon, is all available in SVG to me. And that means that we can implement it now in the files. Previously, you had to give it like a CAD file, a step file of sorts, and you would be able to put it in. But now SVG embossing is absolutely a thing. And we can see that the text embossing tool was first introduced in 2.6, which we talked about. We'll card to that video so you guys can take a look. Now, you can just give it the straight SVG models. It doesn't have to be text anymore, and you don't have to go through the effort of taking an SVG, turning it into a physical body, to then use it for embossing. This is useful. It works just like the regular embossing tool would with text, but instead, it's with an SVG. Now we also have the ability to save the path to the SVG file as well, which would then allow you to further modify the embossing parameters, or you could reload the SVG from the disk later. Otherwise, the SVG part is saved as a model and editing it is no longer possible. So I can understand why importing something and then wanting to move it around and do things with it would no longer make it editable. Maybe that will change in the future, but for right now, once you place it and you save it and you close it, you can no longer change the position of that SVG. This is very valuable, and one of the features that I really like about Tinkercad, where I can just give it an SVG file and it will make me a 3D part. Now, it's not as granular as we see here, and I think Prusa happens to use this rabbit image to show a very tail end, if you will, use case for this. I think a lot of people are going to use it to emboss logos or names or something like that that aren't exactly just a font, where it's maybe a nice calligraphy that was written out and then traced over and turned into an SVG, and not necessarily something this crazy, but hey, the option exists no matter what. Tinkercad, though, is much more basic, which makes sense, but it does kind of beg the question, at what point does Prusa just make their own CAD program? Because we're getting to a point where the slicer itself has so much functionality that you really could use a fair bit of it like a CAD package. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying it's a replacement for Fusion 360, SolidWorks, CATIA, Creo, and all the other ones that will give engineers the cringes. I'm saying that this is a great use case for a first-timer that wants to build something out of rudimentary shapes or has the ability to create their own via SVG or STL import. When you're looking at trying to teach 3D printing to people that haven't actually experienced 3D printing, video on that coming soon, probably next week, stay tuned. The less programs that you have to teach them for them to be competent in something like this, the better, because it means that you are supporting one less program when they inevitably do something wrong. We can also see a huge feature. I have seen it in comments dating as far back as I can remember in our PrusaSlicer videos. Arc welding when? And the answer is normally either soon TM or Friday, because those are the two answers you normally get from Prusa. But we can see that Prusa has implemented their own system for arc welding that they are calling arc fitting. Now, it is based upon the arc welding library by former Lurker, who is the author of the famous Arc Welder Octoprint plugin. That's the beauty of open source. And we're going to see a lot more awesome open source things that Prusa themselves did not immediately develop 100% in-house and instead built upon somebody else's work. Again, we've talked about the value of open source. We've talked about the value of closed source as well. Card to that video so you guys can take a look. But I believe this is where open source wins. It enables a company to see a feature that they like and instantly implement it, because the company that they implemented it from is built upon open source as well. Now, there are some worries, obviously, and we've discussed them before. Heck, we even did a podcast on it, which we'll card to as well. Should that be your kind of thing if you're looking for more long-form content, which we do live podcasts pretty much every weekend, but considering I'm getting my head shaved this Saturday, yeah, December 2nd, 2023, all of this hair is going away. We are going to be shaving my head at the Sanjay Mortimer Rep Rap Fest, benefiting the Sanjay Mortimer Foundation that E3D is putting on in Oxford in the UK. And of course, we are bringing cameras. We got a lot of stuff going out there, and a huge, absolutely massive thank you to Printed Solid for making this trip possible, because my God, I never thought this would be a thing that I would ever get to do in my life. Not only shave my head for charity, but at the same time have somebody sponsor the trip. So thank you very much, Printed Solid, for making it happen. You guys will hear more about all that coming soon. But if you do want to donate and potentially get a chance to be the top bidder and shave whatever you want into my head, we'll link to that donation link in the description down below and in the pinned comment. Tune in, because we're going to be streaming it, and I know a few others are going to be streaming it as well. And every penny that is donated goes directly to supporting the Sanjay Mortimer Foundation, a charity that helps out makers just like me and potentially just like you, the neurodiverse among us who maybe at some point in their life could have needed a little bit of extra assistance. That's what SMF is here to do. And heck, if we can raise a couple of bucks to do it and people get to make fun of me in the process, I'm for it. And hey, maybe we'll inspire some other people to sit in the chair and get some hair cut off. I don't know. Maybe it'll be fun. Anyways, arc welding. The thing, though, with the arc welding, and it is something to keep in mind, is that it is not compatible with the pressure equalizer feature, nor is it compatible with spiral base, which is fine. It makes sense. I get it. Maybe this will change. Pressure equalizer, I don't know why. I get that there are certain limitations, but I don't know what those limitations are. If you know, let me know, because from what I can see, it's not really well explained, but I also might be missing it. So, you know, there's that. And what we can see is if either of those settings are turned on, G2 and G3 G codes will not be emitted. So if you are messing around with a pressure equalizer, which is under speed, so pressure equalizer is down here. This is useful for printers that can't accelerate very fast, but you want to run them fast. We have a few printers like that here in the shop that are very heavy and don't really like to move very fast on the acceleration, but can move very fast on speed because their hot ends actually allow it. It's something that I've been messing with. I find that I get better prints on some machines with it, so something to note there, but most people are not going to use the pressure equalizer. So if you're one of those people, I wouldn't worry about it too much. We can also see binary G code, which is a change that I'm kind of on the fence about. Binary G code looks like this. There is no icon for it. It is .b G code because it is a binary G code. And while it does drastically reduce the file sizes, as you can see, normal G code is ASCII. Binary G code is quite a bit lower. I mean, we're looking at what? Up to an 80% reduction in file size. That's pretty damn good. But now it's not all that editable anymore. Traditionally, if I wanted to open something, I could just go in here and open with Notepad. And in this case, I'm going to use Notepad++ because it's faster. All this G code, it's not readable at all. So you definitely have an issue. And so that means the traditional method of just opening up the G code and being able to adjust things, that kind of goes away. And if you don't have a printer that supports it, you're going to have a problem, right? So exporting binary G code to something like the MK3s that you see behind me wouldn't work. They won't recognize binary G-code. They need ASCII. And for the Mini, the Mark IV, and the XL, it is supported since the 5.1.0 Alpha 2 firmware, and we have been using it on our XL, and we do see a drastic reduction in file size, but part of me just, I don't know if I care. I get that it will adjust the amount of data that is in your input and output, so the read and write cycles of a flash drive. So theoretically, you will get more cycles out of a flash drive before you have to replace it. I totally get that. But if I have to use a different program to go ahead and change that stuff, I can dig it, right? I understand that less file size is better, especially when a lot of you have big file folders just full of models waiting to get printed. Stuff that I'm printing right now on the resin printers is gigabytes worth of G-code. To see smaller G-code files is great, but the editability in the programs that you're used to go away. You will have to use a specific program, which you can get inside of PrusaSlicer. You do have the ability to edit it right there. That will make life a little bit easier. Maybe that falls under the one less program. I see Prusa's point. They want to make editing custom G-code more user-friendly and better documented. I can't really argue with that. I'll have to try it out more myself, but I will tell you, in the alphas and the betas that we've been trying out for 2.7, I have never had a time where I've needed to do this. So it's not something I do often. I like to see this adjustment, and I like that I can go back to the old way if I want. There's no reason that you couldn't go back to the old method if you wanted to, but I just don't know if it's going to catch on. Would you use binary G-code and utilize custom G-code editing inside of PrusaSlicer, or are you going to stick with the ASCII method and, do it the old school way? I'd love to know. One of the big ones for those that connect their printers directly to their computers, be it via the internet, USB cable, whatever, and have ran Octoprint, one of the big features that you guys will miss if you remove Octoprint and use something like, the Clipper interface, is cancel objects inside of PrusaSlicer. It hasn't had it. And while it can omit those annotations for Octoprint, you can't utilize the Prusa side of it to actually command the cancel object feature. Well, now you can. My buddy Paul, who's a wood turner, but is also one of the people, and I'm fairly certain the only person, behind the cancel object plugin, they've now implemented a version of it directly into PrusaSlicer. And now, instead of just a checkbox, you now have a drop-down that will give you disabled, Octoprint comments, and firmware specific options. So if your firmware, like it does on the Mark IV and the XL, directly supports cancel objects, you don't need any other system to do it. In fact, you can go to the screen on your Mark IV or your XL, and if you are printing something that is messed up, you just click cancel object and it disappears from the G-code. It is abysmally cool to me that we have the kind of tech that can go through the code live and take away the stuff for that one model and leave everything else. And that's where labeling comes in. And this would be a great feature if I had it on my Mark IIIs. Now, we don't run Octoprint here. We used to run it for the time lapses, but we just don't do those anymore. And the Mark III behind me back there, the Mark IIIs, that actually had one of the pieces break off. And thankfully, it kind of figured itself out about 10 layers up and it's now printing again. But had I had the option to just click cancel object, my gosh, that would have been so nice. And having it be in the screen or in the interface from PrusaSlicer, whatever your preference might be, is incredibly valuable. So if your printer is not near a computer, you don't quickly have to go back to the computer to cancel the object. You can use the actual interface on the screen itself. I love it. I've used it on the XL before, and it was super, super cool. We're actually really enjoying our XL. Haven't had a ton of time to mess with it lately, but we will be doing more content on it coming up. So if there's any particular products you guys want to see on it, let me know. Of course, we're going to show more multi-material prints, because I think that's really what the XL was intended to do. It's a fun machine. It's very expensive, but it is an awesome machine. Other big news is travel move improvements. We like to see this, especially as people try to push their printers to the limit. Now with Input Shaper being available on the XL and the Mark IV, and you can basically run the same settings on the Mark IIIs. It works fine. Issues with the actual lift height and dealing with the stringing that can come from a Z-hop movement when you want to move your printer relatively fast, because Z is normally the slowest. If you can move XY very quickly, but Z moves very slowly, you might get some stringing. So Prusa now utilizes a ramping slope angle to get to that maximum ramping lift. So rather than just a pick up, move, put down, it goes up at an angle. This will reduce the scarring and the Z-seam lines that you see on your parts. We see this often in PrusaSlicer with your overlap percentage. If it's not done right, you can very obviously see a seam. This piece here, this is Jesse from Printed Solid. This is done in the Printed Solid Elixir that we made. If you guys want to see how that is made, click the card. It's a really, really awesome 50+ minute long video where we made Elixir, but you can see the scar here on Jesse's chest. Had we been using the new ramping slope angle, this likely would not have been there. Also, had I checked seam on the rear, you wouldn't have seen it either, but still a really pretty color, and I still like it, so I'm happy. But we also see a big benefit of open source here as well. We see an implementation from Bamboo Studio being brought over to PrusaSlicer. And for those that are keeping track, this is not the first time Prusa has done this. And this feature is one of the ones that I was hoping to see. Prusa, the next one we really want is plate management. We really like the ability in PrusaSlicer and in Bamboo Studio to be able to add extra plates. I know that technically you can do it in PrusaSlicer. It will arrange all of your parts into plates, but it doesn't arrange extra plates, and you can't just double click on the plate to slice it. The implementation that Bamboo did for that is really good, and I hope to see it implemented inside of PrusaSlicer sometime in the near future. But the big thing, and if you have a Bamboo printer, or you're utilizing Bamboo or Orca, when you do the retraction with the ramp slope, it will not only move up, but it will move up in a circular spiral pattern, which should insanely reduce the amount of stringing that you see on your parts. And now it is on by default when you turn on the ramping travel move. Most of you won't notice it. You might hear a difference, but you will likely see a difference when it comes to the actual end components for your parts. They should look a lot better. But if you have really tuned in that wiping distance that you have for your retraction, you might need to completely redo that with this. So if you do have a perfect Z-seam and you like it the way that it is, I might stay away from this one for now, because you will have to basically start all over again to get it to look right. We can also see UI improvements. We go from 2.6 to 2.7 Alpha 1 to 2.7 Beta 1, which is easier to read, less stressful on the eyes, and you know what? A little bit of UI changes here and there. While they can be jarring, I am looking at you, Fusion 360. They can go a long way into making the experience of the individual much, much better. I don't mind it, and in fact, I barely even noticed it, and had it not been pointed out to me here, it's not all that easy to pick up. Yeah, that looks a little bit different, but it's not different enough that I said, huh, that's really different. But, you know, they're embracing the orange, as one does. Let me know what you guys are most excited for on PrusaSlicer 2.7. While I don't think it is as huge of additions as 2.6 was, I still think we are moving in the right direction, and we are certainly not waiting a long time to get newer versions of slicers. We find that on a lot of open source products that they tend to stagnate over time, and without support from donors and viewers just like you.
Thank you.
They tend to not get updates very often. That's kind of the power of PrusaSlicer, since it is a division of Prusa Research. They fund the development of this system. And I like to see that, because that means that even older printers, like the Mark III's behind me, can get improvements that make them basically completely new machines. But input shaping for the MK3, not the 3.9, MK3, when? I don't know if it's possible with the 8-bit board, but I'd really like to see it. Anyways, guys, let me know your favorite things down there. And while you're doing that, if you do feel so inclined, you can give a couple of bucks to that creator fund. Links are in the description down below. And at the $5 tier and higher, you get your name listed right next to me, where we, remind people how cool all these people are. And at the $10 tier and higher, you get to come hang out in our private Discord server, where we have way too much fun and talk about things like this weeks in advance when it's just coming out into the alpha stages and sharing profiles and helping each other out. It's been a lot of fun. If you like that kind of thing, $10 or higher gets you access, and we have a great group of people there. I think you'll enjoy it as well. But that is all I have for you guys today. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. Click the videos below me. You'll like them. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Mic check, check it out, check it, check. Okay. Got check. Check. Republic.